Introducing Korean broadcast content that you won't be able to stop watching. For weary modern souls, Dr. Romantic, the quirky genius doctor of Puldam Hospital, prescribes heartwarming tales of humanity. A couple together for 7 years sees their rose-tinted glasses shatter. Can they keep their relationship alive? Discover the raw stories of youth, work, and love. Beyond what social media can show, experience the vibrant Korea through its hidden gems. Mama, the ultimate K-pop festival for global fans. Find your star in a feast of trendy music and electrifying performances. And now, the whole world enjoys it together.
As the wait for a breakthrough in the Iran war continues, U.S. President Donald Trump has reportedly sent back changes to a proposed deal with Iran, demanding tougher conditions to end the conflict. Meanwhile, fighting continues between Israel and Hezbollah, as Israel says it has captured a strategic castle in southern Lebanon, calling it a major turning point in its campaign against Hezbollah. Korea's exports in May reached a record high, surging more than 50% from a year earlier, led by strong demand for semiconductors. The country's trade surplus for this year has already exceeded $100 billion, breaking the previous annual record of $95 billion set in 2017 in less than 6 months. Officials from 50 African nations have gathered in Seoul as the Korea-Africa ministerial meeting got underway this morning. The meeting aims to turn commitments made at the Korea-Africa Summit in 2024 into concrete projects. U.S. President Donald Trump has made changes to the terms of a potential framework for a deal to end the war in Iran, with edits reportedly seeking stricter language regarding Iran's nuclear restrictions and the guaranteed reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Our Park Jun-an starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump sent back changes to a proposed deal from Iran after a meeting with advisors on Friday. While the exact details of the edits remain unclear, an official familiar with the issue told CNN that Trump is pushing for much stricter language regarding Iran's nuclear restrictions and the guaranteed reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Reports suggest that Trump is also highly cautious about relaxing sanctions on Tehran, including access to frozen Iranian funds, as he aims to avoid repeating what he views as flaws in past administrations' nuclear deals. Tehran responded with deep skepticism, reiterating that it will not accept a one-sided agreement. Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf made it clear that no deal will receive approval unless Iran's sovereign rights are fully protected. Ghalibaf said that Iranian negotiators place no trust in the words and promises of the enemy, adding that tangible results would lead Iran to fulfill its commitments. Ongoing geopolitical tensions continue to weigh heavily on consumers and global energy markets. Regular gasoline prices averaged $4.34 per gallon in the U.S. over the weekend, almost 46% higher than before the war. Addressing the economic impact at home, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent downplayed concerns about recent price increases, describing the energy-driven inflation as a temporary supply shock that would ease as global markets stabilize. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Israel says it has captured a strategic castle in southern Lebanon, marking Israel's deepest incursion into the country in 26 years. This comes as Israeli forces have expanded evacuation orders across the region. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Israel says it has captured the strategic Beaufort Castle in southern Lebanon, which Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described as a decisive shift in the country's offensive against Hezbollah. Located just 14.5 kilometers from the Israeli border, the fortress overlooks the Litani Valley, beyond an area in southern Lebanon from where Israel had stated its original objective was to remove Hezbollah fighters. It is seen as both a symbolic and strategic prize. In a statement following the operation, Netanyahu said Israel had broken the barrier of fear and was now taking the initiative across multiple fronts, including Lebanon, Gaza, and Syria. He said the goal is to deepen and expand Israel's control over areas previously held by Hezbollah. Defense Minister Israel Katz highlighted the symbolic significance of the capture, noting that the Golani Brigade, which first seized the castle during the Lebanon War 4 decades ago, had once again raised the Israeli flag over the site. Israeli officials say controlling Beaufort Castle and the surrounding ridge strengthens protection for communities along Israel's northern border. The development comes as Israeli ground forces continue advancing deeper into Lebanese territory beyond the Litani River, while the military has expanded evacuation orders across southern Lebanon. The Israel Defense Forces have again warned residents to leave all areas south of the Zorani River, marking the second such broad evacuation order in recent days. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam condemned the operation, accusing Israel of carrying out what he called collective punishment. The castle was built by Crusaders roughly 900 years ago and was held by Israel from 1982 until 2000. 이승재, Arirang News.
South Korea's export sector continues its robust upward trajectory, fueled by surging global demand for memory chips and automobiles. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources reported today that outbound shipments reached $87.75 billion in May, marking a massive 53.2% surge year-on-year. This explosive growth drove the nation's total trade surplus to a substantial $26.95 billion. Semiconductor exports, which account for a critical portion of the country's economic output, spearheaded the expansion, jumping 169.4% to $37.16 billion compared to the same period last year. Average daily exports set a historic milestone by breaking past the $4 billion mark for the first time on record. Korea saw a record turnout of 23.51% during 2 days of early voting for local elections. According to the National Election Commission, more than 10.4 million voters cast ballots during the early voting period from Friday morning to Saturday evening. Turnout reached 11.6% on the first day and 11.91% on the second day. The figure surpasses the previous local election early voting record of 20.62% set in 2022. Voters will head to the polls again on Wednesday. This week, President Lee Jae Myung celebrates the first anniversary of his inauguration. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jang-min takes a look back at the past year, with a focus on his diplomatic and economic policies.
On June 4, 2025, Lee Jae Myung was sworn in as the country's 21st president, vowing to end polarization triggered by martial law.
희망의 새 나라를 위한 우리 국민의 준엄한 명령을 반드시 받들겠습니다.
6 months later, he relocated the nation's top office back to the Blue House, or 청와대, the traditional presidential compound, officially ending the Yongsan era, during which martial law was declared in 2024. On the diplomatic front, President Lee reached a trade deal with his U.S. counterpart, Donald Trump, after 2 summits, promising large-scale investments in the U.S. for lower tariffs. Also agreed with cooperation on South Korea building a nuclear power submarine.
한미 동맹은 안보와 경제, 첨단 기술을 포괄하는 진정한 미래형 전략적 포괄 동맹으로 발전 심화하게 되었습니다.
President Lee has brought a kind of maturity and sort of balance to South Korean foreign policies. That's probably the best one, is sort of keeping things on the rails, given that the U.S. has turned out to be a pretty difficult partner under this president.
On top of that, the South Korean leader placed pragmatic diplomacy at the forefront, having restored Seoul-Beijing ties and resumed the so-called Seoul-Tokyo shuttle diplomacy. Another focus was expanding diplomatic horizons to the global south amid global uncertainties. On the economy, South Korean stocks have seen an unprecedented rally, driven by a global AI boom and efforts to improve shareholder returns, with the benchmark Kospi exceeding far beyond the 5,000 threshold, one of its campaign pledges. In 2025, Korea secured 260,000 GPUs from NVIDIA and launched the Presidential Council on National AI Strategy.
저는 우리가 하기에 따라서 이 코리아 디스카운트가 아니고 얼마든지 정상 평가를 넘어서서 코리아 프리미엄도 가능하다.
Reviving the people's livelihoods was also a key pillar, with the administration organizing extra budgets to breathe life into the economy in the form of consumption vouchers, as well as minimizing the fallout from the Middle East conflict as the country navigates high interest rates, high inflation, and a weaker currency. When it comes to stabilizing housing prices in the capital, Seoul, the president has reinstated the heavy capital gains tax on multiple home owners and sent out a series of strong messages to curb housing speculation. 1 year ago, President Lee took an oath of office, placing pragmatism front and center. For his second year in office, he puts greater emphasis on yielding tangible outcomes. He will unveil key policy visions next week for the year ahead. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Seoul and African countries are discussing ways to strengthen economic cooperation and jointly respond to global challenges based on growing solidarity. Now, that's according to Foreign Minister Cho Hyun speaking at the first Korea-Africa Foreign Ministers meeting, which runs for 3 days starting today. Citing uncertainties in supply chains, energy, and food security, and the ongoing Middle East situation, Cho said he hopes the meeting will help build a partnership that together grows, responds to crisis, and shapes the future. Ghana's Foreign Minister Samuel Okseto Ablakwa, who is the deputy chairperson of the African Union Commission, also highlighted the growing strength and strategic importance of Korea-Africa relations. He called for ways to deepen shared resilience and innovation-driven growth, including infrastructure and critical minerals development, job creation, and capacity building. Korea could soon deploy AI to monitor much of its frontline defenses along the border. The Defense Ministry says the move is being considered as part of a broader response to the country's shrinking population. Our Kim Sa-young has the details.
More than 22,000 troops are currently assigned to guard duties at roughly 200 general outposts along the heavily fortified border with North Korea. That number is expected to be cut to around 6,000. Defense Minister An Kyu-baek said the military will make the reduction by building what he called an AI-based scientific surveillance system. The plan reflects the impact of South Korea's shrinking military manpower, but it is also aimed at shifting troops away from the manpower-intensive border duty model and using them more effectively elsewhere. Defense Minister An said around 16,000 troops would be moved to rear areas and deployed back to the GOPs in the event of a contingency. The key question will be whether the technology can operate reliably in frontline conditions. Concerns remain over false alarms, hacking risk, and initial response capability in border areas, where a rapid reaction would be critical in the event of an emergency.
Even Israel's AI border surveillance system was breached by Hamas, resulting in heavy casualties. Technology can fail, so there must be supplementary measures in place, including a rapid response team.
The ministry also said the authorities are discussing plans to expand civilian roles in rear area security and transfer coastal defense duties to the Korea Coast Guard. It is also pursuing a broader restructuring plan in response to the expected drop in troop levels from 450,000 to around 350,000 by 2040. At the same time, the ministry is also considering bringing in more outsourced personnel, including private military contractors, to maintain an overall force of 500,000. The government is reviewing a plan to integrate the Army, Navy, and Air Force academies into a single military academy. Under the proposal, cadets would receive common training in their first 2 years, followed by branch-specific education in the third and fourth years. Kim Seo-young, Arirang News.
While the United States and China are locked in a fierce space race to build lunar cities and outposts, South Korea is also intensifying its efforts with the goal of establishing a lunar base in approximately 20 years. Our Chae Eun-kyung reports.
These bricks, featuring a color reminiscent of baked ochre, are made from components identical to moon soil. They are the result of an experiment to produce construction materials directly on the moon through a sintering process, which uses microwaves to solidify the soil.
We have secured the technology to produce uniform construction blocks. We plan to apply this technology not only to the moon, but to Martian soil.
In addition, specialized equipment has been developed to apply microwaves directly to the lunar surface to build landing pads and roads for spacecraft. While current capabilities allow for solidifying areas 15 centimeters wide and 1 centimeter deep, the ultimate goal is to pave larger, deeper, and more uniform roads. To secure water, researchers are developing drilling systems designed to break into ice deposits at the moon's south pole. Research is currently underway on equipment capable of digging to a depth of 3 meters. However, the operation of such equipment on the moon requires a reliable energy source. So, since 2019, the Korea Atomic Energy Research Institute has been developing a micronuclear reactor, specifically a heat pipe-cooled reactor for space applications. The Korea Astronomy and Space Science Institute is creating a lunar polarization map, essential for South Korea's first lunar lander mission scheduled for 2032, while the Korea Institute of Geoscience and Mineral Resources is producing an elemental map to facilitate lunar resource exploration. While this is still in its infancy compared to the progress of giants like the US and China, it is essential to take a long-term perspective and focus more intensely on nurturing talent in the space sector. Chae Eun-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. An explosion at a village in Myanmar's Shan state has killed at least 55 people and wounded dozens more. According to local media reports, the blast occurred at noon local time on Sunday in Kaung Tot village near the Chinese border. The Taang National Liberation Army rebel group that controlled the area said mining explosives stored in the village detonated accidentally. Footage from the scene showed a large crater surrounded by shattered buildings. Children were among the dead and hundreds of homes were damaged. An investigation is underway. Colombia is heading to a presidential runoff after no candidate secured more than 50% of the vote on Sunday, with right-wing outsider Abelardo de la Espriella leading leftist Senator Ivan Cepeda by 43% to 41%. De la Espriella, a lawyer known as El Tigre, or the Tiger, who has never held elected office, has modeled himself on El Salvador's Nayib Bukele and is promising a military crackdown on armed groups. Cepeda has pledged to continue outgoing President Petro's peace negotiation strategy with rebel groups. The runoff is seen as a test of the direction Latin America will take between progressive policies and the region's growing shift toward hardline security candidates. 5 patients have recovered from Ebola virus in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the first documented recoveries by people with confirmed cases since the current outbreak began. The head of the World Health Organization said on Sunday that 4 patients were discharged that day and 1 the day before, adding that anyone who contracts Ebola can recover with early treatment even without an approved vaccine or medicine. A new treatment center opened in Congo's Ituri province on Sunday. The WHO said 134 confirmed cases have been recorded across Congo and Uganda, with 18 confirmed deaths as of May 29th. Doctors Without Borders warned the virus is still spreading faster than the response. Paris Saint-Germain won the Champions League for the second consecutive year on Saturday, beating Arsenal on penalties in Budapest. But celebrations back in France turned violent overnight, leaving more than 200 people injured and 1 dead. French authorities said 57 police officers were injured in Paris and over 400 people were taken into custody. Rioters torched cars and rental bikes and destroyed storefronts across the French capital. Interior Minister Laurent Nunez said more than 20,000 officers had been deployed and the situation was overall under control. Far-right leader Marine Le Pen said, quote, "Only in France does a football victory trigger riots." President Macron called the violence unacceptable. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
June is starting with classic summer weather across Korea today. Temperatures are climbing well above average across much of the country, and the heat is not stopping there. Tomorrow will be even hotter with an expected high of 33 degrees Celsius. Then warmer weather will continue through local elections on Wednesday. While most regions stay mostly dry today, weather conditions are beginning to change in the southern regions. The rain that began on Jeju Island this morning will spread to the southern coast later tonight. Mountainous regions on Jeju Island could see more than 150 millimeters. Most of the southern coast might get up to 80 millimeters of downpours through tomorrow. And this afternoon, Seoul and Gwangju will be getting up to 30 degrees Celsius. Busan will be at 28 degrees. The summer heat will continue through midweek, with temperatures are still expected to stay near or above 30 degrees in many regions, with a chance of rain or passing showers.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.